Welcome, weary traveller, to Sleepless Survivors. Tonight we invite you to drift into peaceful slumber as we journey back through the mists of time, back to the cradle of civilization itself, back to ancient Mesopotamia, where the first cities rose from the earth, where writing was born, and where mysterious beings called the Anunnaki walked among humanity. Let yourself relax, get comfortable, close your eyes if you wish. Tonight's journey will take us through 7,000 years of forgotten history, through the ruins of magnificent cities, through the myths and legends of gods who came from the stars, and through the archaeological wonders that still confound modern science. Breathe deeply, let the tensions of your day fade away. We have all the time in the world tonight. Our story begins in the land between two rivers. The ancient Greeks called it Mesopotamia, from the words mesos meaning middle, and potamos meaning river. This fertile crescent nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers would become the birthplace of human civilization as we know it. But before the great cities rose, before the ziggurats touched the sky, before kings and emperors walked these lands, there were the Anunnaki. According to ancient Sumerian texts, these were the supreme deities, the great gods who came from the heavens to earth. Their name, in the ancient tongue, meant those who came from heaven to earth, or the princely offspring or offspring of Anu, the supreme sky god. Picture, if you will, the flat plains of southern Mesopotamia, around 4500 BCE. The land is harsh, the sun beats down mercilessly, the rivers flood unpredictably, bringing both life and destruction. Small groups of humans eke out an existence, farming barley and wheat, domesticating sheep and goats. Life is short, brutish, and simple. And then, according to the ancient stories, everything changed. The Anunnaki descended. Some texts describe them arriving in great ships that flew through the sky. Others speak of them emerging from the cosmic waters, the primordial ocean from which all life sprang. They brought with them knowledge that transformed humanity: agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, writing, law, and the secrets of civilization itself. Let yourself sink deeper into relaxation as we explore these mysteries. Your breathing is slow and steady. Your body is heavy and comfortable. The ancient world unfolds before your mind's eye like a dream. The earliest texts that mention the Anunnaki come from Sumerian cuneiform tablets, some dating back nearly 5,000 years. These weren't primitive scratchings or simple myths. These were sophisticated narratives, cosmological explanations, detailed genealogies of divine beings who intervened in human affairs. In Sumerian mythology, Anu was the supreme authority, the sky god, the king of the gods. His name meant heaven or sky. He resided in the highest heaven and rarely descended to earth. His sons and daughters, the Anunnaki, were more active in the world of mortals. Enlil, the god of wind and storms, was chief among the Anunnaki who dealt with humanity. His temple at Nippur was the religious centre of Sumer for thousands of years. Enlil decided the fates of mortals. He controlled the elements. In some texts he's described as stern and sometimes hostile to humanity. It was Enlil, according to the Atrahasis epic, who decided to destroy humanity with a great flood because their noise disturbed his rest. But Enki, the god of wisdom, crafts and fresh water, often acted as humanity's friend and protector. Called Ea in later Akkadian texts, Enki was cunning and creative. He dwelt in the Abzu, the freshwater ocean beneath the earth. When Enlil decreed the flood, it was Enki who secretly warned the human Atrahasis, instructing him to build an ark to save humanity and the animals. Does this story sound familiar? The parallels between the Mesopotamian flood narrative and the biblical story of Noah are striking and undeniable. But the Mesopotamian version is older, much older, predating the Hebrew Bible by more than 1,000 years. Let your mind wander through these ancient tales. Don't hold on to any thoughts too tightly. Just let them flow like the Tigris and Euphrates, carrying you gently towards sleep. The Anunnaki, according to Sumerian texts, numbered in the hundreds. Some sources speak of the Great Anunnaki, 700, or the Anunnaki, all of them. They formed a divine assembly, a council of gods who made decisions about cosmic matters and earthly affairs. Interestingly, Sumerian texts make a distinction between the Anunnaki, who are connected to the earth and the underworld, and the Agigi, who are celestial deities of the heavens, servants of the greater Anunnaki gods. In some creation myths, the Agigi were the labourers who grew tired of their work and rebelled, leading the Anunnaki to create humanity to serve as workers in their place. This creation story is preserved in the Atrahasis epic and later in the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth. According to these texts, the gods grew weary of maintaining the world. They needed workers to dig irrigation canals, build cities, and provide food offerings. So they created humans by mixing clay with the blood of a slain god, giving humanity both a physical body tied to the earth and a divine spark of consciousness. Let one god be slaughtered, so that all the gods may be cleansed in a dipping. From his flesh and blood let Nintu mix clay, that God and man may be thoroughly mixed in the clay. This was the birth of humanity according to the ancient Mesopotamians. We were created to serve the gods, to lighten their burden, to work the earth and make it productive. But in this act of creation something unexpected happened. Humanity received intelligence, creativity and free will. We became more than simple servants. We became builders of cities, writers of stories, seekers of meaning. Rest now in the knowledge of this ancient wisdom. Feel yourself becoming one with the earth, with the clay from which the first humans were formed. You are part of this ancient story, connected to thousands of years of human experience and wonder. Now let us turn our attention to the cities themselves, those magnificent urban centres that rose from the Mesopotamian plains, inspired and guided by the Anunnaki according to ancient belief. The first great city was Eridu, founded according to Sumerian tradition around 5400 BCE. Archaeological evidence confirms that Eridu is indeed one of the oldest continuously inhabited places on Earth. Located in what is now southern Iraq, Eridu was dedicated to Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh water. The Sumerian king list, an ancient text that chronicles the rulers of Sumer, begins with these words. When kingship was lowered from heaven, kingship was first in Eridu. This suggests that Eridu was not just the first city, but the place where divine rule, where civilization itself was first established on Earth. Imagine walking through Eridu in its prime, around 2500 BCE. The great temple to Enki dominates the city centre, a massive ziggurat rising in stepped levels toward the sky. These ziggurats weren't just religious structures. According to ancient belief, they were cosmic mountains, connecting Earth to heaven, places where the gods could descend to interact with humanity. The temple itself is a marvel, painted in brilliant colours that gleam in the Mesopotamian sun. Red and blue glazed bricks form intricate patterns. The walls are adorned with copper reliefs depicting the deeds of Enki and the Anunnaki. Inside, priests tend to the statue of Enki, providing daily offerings of food and drink, maintaining the cosmic order through ritual and prayer. Around the temple, the city sprawls, mud brick houses packed closely together, separated by narrow winding streets, the smell of bread baking in outdoor ovens, the sound of children playing, merchants calling out their wares in the marketplace, fresh fish from the rivers, dates from the palm groves, barley and wheat from the surrounding fields. Let yourself drift through these ancient streets. You are safe here, an invisible observer, floating peacefully through time and space. The sounds of the ancient city are like a lullaby, distant and soothing. But Eridu was just the beginning. As the 4th millennium BCE progressed, more cities emerged across southern Mesopotamia. Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Nippur, Kish, each one a centre of power, culture and divine worship. Uruk, perhaps more than any other city, exemplifies the Mesopotamian achievement. At its height around 2900 BCE, Uruk may have been home to 50,000 people, making it the largest city in the world at that time. Its massive walls, later attributed to the legendary King Gilgamesh, stretched for 9 kilometres, enclosing temples, palaces and densely packed residential districts. The White Temple at Uruk, dedicated to the sky god Anu, stood atop a ziggurat over 40 feet high. Climb those ancient steps in your mind, feel each footfall on sun-warmed stone. As you ascend, the city spreads out below you. The Euphrates River glints in the distance. Fields of grain stretch to the horizon. The world seems endless and full of possibility. Archaeologists excavating Uruk discovered something extraordinary in the ruins, the earliest examples of true writing. These weren't simple pictographs or accounting marks. This was cuneiform, a sophisticated writing system capable of expressing complex thoughts, narratives, and ideas. The invention of writing around 3400 BCE was revolutionary. For the first time in human history, knowledge could be preserved across generations with perfect accuracy. Laws could be recorded, stories could be told and retold without change, the past could speak directly to the future. And what did these first writers choose to record? Administrative records. Yes, lists of grain and livestock transactions and taxes, but also myths, epics, and hymns to the gods. They wrote about the Anunnaki, about the creation of the world, about the relationship between gods and mortals. Breathe slowly, deeply. Feel yourself sinking into the comfortable embrace of your bed, like sinking into the soft clay banks of the Euphrates. The ancient world surrounds you, timeless and eternal. The city of Ur, home of the biblical Abraham, rose to prominence around 2600 BCE. Its great ziggurat, dedicated to the moon god Nana, still stands today, a testament to ancient architectural genius. The structure was enormous, a base measuring roughly 64 by 46 metres, rising in 3 great terraces to a temple shrine at the summit. Unlike Egyptian pyramids, which were tombs sealed against the living, ziggurats were meant to be climbed. Priests would ascend daily to tend to the gods. Religious processions would wind up the great staircases. On festival days, the entire city might gather at the ziggurat's base to participate in sacred rituals. King Namu, who built the great ziggurat of Ur around 2100 BCE, left inscriptions describing his pious work. I built for him his beloved temple. I made its foundation as firm as the mountains. This wasn't merely a construction project. This was an act of cosmic significance, binding heaven and earth, ensuring the god's presence among his people. The royal tombs of Ur, excavated by Leonard Woolley in the 1920s, revealed the extraordinary wealth and sophistication of Sumerian civilization. Golden headdresses, lapis lazuli jewellery imported from Afghanistan, elaborate musical instruments including lyres decorated with gold and inlaid with precious stones, game boards for playing the royal game of Ur, one of the oldest known board games. Most hauntingly, the tombs contained evidence of human sacrifice. When royalty died, servants, musicians, and guards were apparently buried alive to accompany their masters into the afterlife. Dozens of bodies were found arranged in neat rows, seemingly having taken poison and died peacefully. Whether this was voluntary or forced remains unknown, but it speaks to the absolute power of Sumerian rulers and the depth of religious belief in an afterlife where service continued. Let these images settle in your mind like dust settling on ancient stones. Don't grasp at them. Simply observe and release. Your consciousness is becoming softer, more dreamlike, floating between waking and sleeping. Lagash was another great Sumerian city, located near the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates. This city-state left us remarkable archaeological treasures, including over 30,000 cuneiform tablets that provide detailed insights into daily life, administration, and religious practice. From Lagash, we know about the governance of temple estates, the distribution of rations to workers, the role of women in the economy. We read about Entemena, ruler of Lagash around 2400 BCE, who commissioned the famous silver vase bearing his name, decorated with the lion-headed eagle Anzu, symbol of the god Ningisu. We also read about Gudea, perhaps the most famous ruler of Lagash, who reigned around 2144 to 124 BCE. Multiple statues of Gudea survive, showing him as a pious, peaceful ruler, often depicted holding architectural plans for temples. Inscriptions on these statues describe his temple-building projects in loving detail. One long text, known as the Cylinders of Gudea, describes how the god Ningisu appeared to Gudea in a dream, showing him the plans for a new temple called Ininu, House of 50. Gudea imported cedar from Lebanon, copper from Anatolia, gold from Egypt, and stones from distant lands to build this magnificent structure. The text meticulously describes the construction process, the dedication ceremony, and the blessings the god bestowed on the city as a result. This theme of gods appearing in dreams to give instructions appears repeatedly in Mesopotamian texts. The line between the divine realm and the human world was permeable. The Anunnaki were distant, yes, living in their heavenly abodes, but they remained intimately involved in earthly affairs, communicating through dreams, omens, and direct appearances. You too are entering the realm of dreams now. Your body is completely relaxed. Your breathing is slow and regular. The ancient world and the modern world are blending together in that liminal space between waking and sleeping. Nippur held special significance among Mesopotamian cities because it was the sacred city of Enlil, the king of the gods. While Nippur was never a major political power, every Mesopotamian ruler sought to control it, or at least gain legitimacy through association with its temples. The Eka, Enlil's temple at Nippur, was considered the centre of the world, the place where heaven and earth met. Rulers from across Mesopotamia sent tribute and commissioned building projects there. To be recognised by the priests of Nippur was to be recognised by Enlil himself, to have divine approval for your rule. Archaeologists excavating Nippur discovered the largest collection of cuneiform tablets from any ancient Mesopotamian site, more than 50,000 tablets spanning thousands of years. These include copies of many major Sumerian literary works, hymns, lamentations, wisdom texts, and mythological narratives. From Nippur comes much of our knowledge about the Anunnaki and their relationships with each other and with humanity. The tablets preserve myths about the creation of the world, about conflicts between gods, about the establishment of cosmic order. One such myth, Enki and Ninmah, describes how the gods created humanity. After humans were made, Enki and the mother goddess Ninmah had a creation competition, while drunk on beer, each trying to create more unusual beings. Ninmah created several disabled or impaired humans, and Enki had to find roles and purposes for each of them in society. This myth served to explain and valorize people with disabilities, giving them divine origin and ordained purpose. The Mesopotamians, we must remember, were not primitive or simple people. They grappled with complex philosophical questions. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why is there suffering? What obligations do we have to each other? What is the nature of justice? Their myths were attempts to understand these perennial human concerns, rest in the wisdom of the ancients. They struggled with the same questions that trouble us today. You are part of an unbroken chain of human consciousness stretching back thousands of years. Let that connection comfort you as you drift towards sleep. Kish, one of the most ancient cities, played a crucial role in Mesopotamian political ideology. After the Great Flood, according to the Sumerian king list, kingship was lowered from heaven at Kish. For later rulers throughout Mesopotamian history, the title King of Kish became a prestigious designation implying universal sovereignty, even when Kish itself held little actual power. Archaeological excavations at Kish revealed some of the oldest wheeled vehicles known to archaeology, dating to around 3000 BCE. The invention of the wheel revolutionized transportation, warfare, and pottery production. Combined with the domestication of oxen and donkeys, wheeled vehicles allowed Mesopotamians to move goods and armies across the landscape with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Kish also gives us evidence of early writing and sophisticated urban planning. The city was laid out in a grid pattern with major streets, drainage systems, and distinct residential and industrial districts. This wasn't haphazard growth. This was intentional urban design, requiring centralized planning and coordination. The great cities of Mesopotamia didn't exist in isolation. They formed a network of competing and cooperating city-states, each with its own patron deity, each vying for resources, trade, and political dominance. Wars were frequent but usually limited in scope. A city might be conquered and required to pay tribute, but it would retain its basic structure and population. This system of city-states lasted for over 1,000 years, from around 3500 BCE to 2300 BCE. Then came Sargon of Akkad, and everything changed. Let yourself release the details. Don't try to remember everything, just let the story wash over you like waves on a shore, rhythmic and soothing, carrying you deeper into relaxation. Sargon the Great, who reigned from approximately 2334 to 2279 BCE, created the world's first empire. He conquered all of Sumer, extended his reach into Syria and Anatolia, and possibly campaigned as far as the Mediterranean coast and the mountains of Persia. Sargon's origins were humble according to legend. He was born in secret to a priestess who set him adrift in a reed basket on the Euphrates River. A gardener found and raised him. Eventually he came to serve as cupbearer to the king of Kish. Through cunning and charisma, Sargon usurped the throne and began his campaign of conquest. This legend of the abandoned child who rises to greatness appears again in the story of Moses, and later in tales of Romulus and Remus, founders of Rome. These archetypal narratives served to legitimize rulers of low birth while emphasizing the role of divine destiny in human affairs. Sargon established his capital at Akkad, a city whose location remains unknown despite extensive archaeological searching. From there, he administered an empire using Akkadian, a Semitic language, for official documents, though Sumerian remained important for religious and literary purposes. The Akkadian Empire brought cultural synthesis. Sumerian and Akkadian religious traditions merged. The Anunnaki were now worshipped under both Sumerian and Akkadian names. Inanna became Ishtar, Enki became Ea, Enlil remained Enlil. The myths evolved and expanded, incorporating new elements while maintaining their core narratives. Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, who ruled from 2254 to 2218 BCE, declared himself a god during his lifetime, a radical break from tradition. He had himself depicted wearing the horned crown of divinity. Inscriptions called him God of Akkad. This hubris, according to later traditions, led to his downfall. The gods, offended by his presumption, sent the Gutians, wild mountain people, to destroy his empire. Whether this moralizing tale reflects historical reality is debatable, but the Akkadian Empire did collapse around 2154 BCE, fragmenting back into competing city-states. Yet its legacy endured. The ideal of universal empire, of a single ruler uniting all civilized lands, would inspire countless later conquerors from Hammurabi to Cyrus to Alexander. Breathe deeply. Your body is so heavy now, so comfortable and still. The rise and fall of empires seems distant and unimportant. All that matters is this moment of peace and rest. After a century of chaos following Akkad's collapse, a new Sumerian renaissance emerged under the third dynasty of Ur, often called Ur III, ruling from 2112 to 2004 BCE. This period represents the last time ethnic Sumerians held political dominance in Mesopotamia. Ur-Nammu, founder of the dynasty, created the earliest known law code, predating Hammurabi's famous code by 3 centuries. These weren't arbitrary decrees, but attempts to establish justice based on rational principles. Punishments were often fines rather than physical mutilation, suggesting a more humane legal philosophy than would come later. Ur-Nammu's son, Shulgi, reigned for 46 years and left extensive records of his achievements. He claimed to have run from Nippur to Ur, a distance of over 100 miles, in a single day to attend festivals at both cities. This superhuman feat was meant to demonstrate his divine favour and physical perfection. Shulgi reformed the calendar, standardised weights and measures, established a courier system for rapid communication across the empire, and supported the arts and education. Scribal schools, called aduba or tablet houses, proliferated during his reign. Young boys from wealthy families spent years learning to read and write cuneiform, studying mathematics, and memorising literary texts. The curriculum was rigorous. Students began by practising individual cuneiform signs on clay tablets. They advanced to copying word lists, then proverbs, then complete literary texts. The best students might become scribes for temples or palaces, positions of prestige and security. Others might become merchants, using their literacy to keep accounts and write contracts. From these scribal schools come many of our surviving Sumerian literary texts. Students copied myths, hymns, and epics as part of their training. They made errors, which help us understand the transmission of texts across generations. They wrote practice essays complaining about their teachers and the difficulty of their studies, giving us touching glimpses into the universal student experience across time. Imagine being a young scribe in training in ancient Ur. You wake before dawn in your family's mud brick house. After a simple breakfast of bread and dates, you walk through the cool morning streets to the Adaba. 30 other boys crowd the long room, each with his clay tablet and stylus. The master scribe enters. All rise. He begins reciting a Sumerian proverb. He who possesses much silver may be happy. He who possesses much barley may be happy. But he who has nothing at all can sleep. You repeat the words again and again until they're memorized. Then you carefully inscribe them onto your tablet, forming each cuneiform wedge with precision. The day stretches on. More proverbs, mathematical exercises. If a man has a granary containing 1800 zilla of grain, and he removes 3 zilla per day, how long until it's empty? You calculate on your tablet. 600 days. The master scribe nods approval. Feel yourself in that ancient classroom. The The clay is cool and damp in your hands. The stylus feels awkward at first, then gradually more natural. You're learning the most powerful technology in the ancient world, writing. You're becoming part of an educated elite. Your future is bright. Let this scene fade gently. You're becoming sleepier now, thoughts growing fuzzy and disconnected. The ancient world becomes a dream, and dreams become sleep. But our story isn't finished yet. We must speak of the fall of Ur-Thryd and what came after. Around 2004 BCE, disaster struck. The Amorites and Elamites, peoples from the deserts to the west and the mountains to the east, invaded Sumer. Ur was sacked. The last king of Ur-Thryd, Ibisin, was carried off in chains to Elam. The great cities were devastated. A genre of literature called city lamentations emerged from this catastrophe. These were long poetic works describing in vivid, heartbreaking detail the destruction of great cities. The lament for Ur describes the city's patron goddess Ningal, pleading with Enlil to spare her city, then weeping as Ur burns. Ur. Inside it there is death, outside it there is death. Inside we are to be finished off by famine, outside we are to be finished off by Elamite weapons. In Ur the enemy oppresses us. Oh, we are finished. These lamentations served multiple purposes. They expressed genuine grief and trauma. They attempted to understand why the gods had allowed such suffering, usually concluding that the gods themselves grieved, but had decreed this fate for reasons beyond human understanding. And they served as rituals of communal mourning, bringing people together in shared sorrow. The destruction wasn't total or permanent. Cities were rebuilt. Life continued. But the Sumerian language began its slow decline, gradually replaced by Akkadian for everyday speech, surviving only as a liturgical and scholarly language, much as Latin survived in medieval Europe. The Anunnaki myths continued but evolved. As Babylonians became the dominant power in southern Mesopotamia, their god Marduk rose to supremacy. The Enuma Elish, composed sometime in the early 2nd millennium BCE, tells how Marduk defeated Tiamat, the primordial goddess of chaos and saltwater, creating the world from her corpse and establishing his authority over all other gods. This myth was recited annually during the Babylonian New Year festival. Through ritual, the creation of the world was symbolically reenacted, cosmic order was reaffirmed, and the king's legitimacy was renewed. Marduk absorbed characteristics and powers previously attributed to other gods. He became the new chief of the Anunnaki, though the old gods remained honoured. Rest now in the eternal cycles of destruction and renewal. Cities fall and rise, gods reign and fade. Through it all, human life continues, adapting, surviving, finding meaning and beauty, even in times of chaos. Babylon itself, which would become the greatest city of Mesopotamia, was a relatively minor settlement during the Sumerian period. But under Hammurabi, who ruled from 1792 to 1750 BCE, Babylon became the political and cultural centre of Mesopotamia, a position it would hold, with some interruptions, for over 1,000 years. Hammurabi is famous for his law code, inscribed on a black stone stele now housed in the Louvre. The stele shows Hammurabi receiving the laws from Shamash, the sun god and god of justice. This divine sanction was crucial. The laws weren't Hammurabi's arbitrary commands, but cosmic principles revealed by the gods. The Code of Hammurabi contains 282 laws covering everything from property rights to family relations to professional malpractice. If a builder builds a house for a man and does not make its construction firm, and the house which he has built collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, that builder shall be put to death. Modern readers often focus on the harsh punishments, the famous eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth principle. But we should also note the code's sophistication. It distinguishes between intentional and accidental harm. It provides protections for widows, orphans, and the poor. It establishes standard fees for various services. It attempts to create a predictable, rational legal system. Hammurabi wasn't just a lawgiver, he was a skilled diplomat and military leader who gradually expanded Babylonian control through a combination of warfare, strategic marriages, and careful alliance building. In his later years, he could claim to rule all of Mesopotamia, from the Persian Gulf to northern Syria. But empires are fragile things, dependent on the ability and ambition of individual rulers. After Hammurabi's death, Babylonian power waned. Within a century and a half, the city was sacked by the Hittites, a people from distant Anatolia. The Kassites, a mysterious people whose origins remain debated, then ruled Babylon for over 4 centuries. Throughout these political changes, the myths of the Anunnaki persisted. Priests continued their daily rituals. Scribes copied ancient texts. The gods remained present in the world, demanding worship, intervening in human affairs, maintaining cosmic order. You are floating now, barely aware of my words, drifting between consciousness and sleep. The ancient world is a comforting presence, vast and timeless, holding you gently as you rest. We must pause to consider the ziggurats more deeply, for these structures embodied Mesopotamian cosmology and the relationship between gods and humans. A ziggurat wasn't a tomb or a palace, it was the god's house, a cosmic mountain connecting earth to heaven. The Sumerians believed that before civilization, the gods dwelt on cosmic mountains. When they created humans and descended to dwell among them, ziggurats served as artificial mountains, making the gods feel at home. The structure was carefully oriented to the cardinal directions. The corners faced north, south, east, and west. This aligned the ziggurat, with cosmic order, making it an axis mundi, a world centre where vertical and horizontal dimensions intersected. The temple at the summit was relatively small and simple, containing a table for offerings and often a bed, for some gods were believed to sleep there. The true grandeur was in the structure itself, the massive staged platform rising above the flat Mesopotamian plain, visible for miles, dominating the landscape both physically and symbolically. Pilgrims approaching a great city would see the ziggurat first, gleaming in the sun. As they drew closer, the structure would loom larger, overwhelming in its scale and perfection. Finally arriving at its base, they would feel their own smallness, their insignificance before the divine. Yet the ziggurat was also welcoming. The great staircases invited ascent. Religious festivals brought the entire community together at the ziggurat's base. The structure didn't separate the gods from humanity, but rather provided a meeting point, a place where divine and mortal could interact. The Babylonian ziggurat called Etemenanki, House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, may be the origin of the biblical Tower of Babel story. This massive structure, dedicated to Marduk, was over 90 meters tall. Its 7 levels were painted different colors, representing the 7 heavens and perhaps the 7 known planets. According to the biblical account in Genesis, humanity attempted to build a tower reaching to heaven. God, troubled by their presumption and their unity, confused their languages so they could no longer understand each other, scattering them across the earth. The tower remained unfinished, a monument to failed ambition. But the Mesopotamians didn't see their ziggurats as acts of hubris. These were sacred duties, acts of devotion and service. Building a ziggurat brought divine favour. Neglecting temple maintenance invited catastrophe. The gods required proper housing, proper worship, proper respect. Let the image of the ziggurat fill your mind. A massive stepped pyramid rising against a brilliant blue sky. Glazed bricks shimmering in the sun, staircases climbing toward the heavens, priests in white linen ascending to tend the god's shrine. This is the architecture of the sacred, the meeting place of heaven and earth. And now feel yourself ascending those ancient steps, 1 foot, then another. The city grows small beneath you. The air becomes cooler. You climb into the sky itself, moving beyond the mortal world, approaching the divine realm. At the summit, peace awaits, perfect rest, eternal tranquility. You're almost asleep now. Let yourself go. There's no need to hold on to consciousness. The story continues, but you can release it, letting it become dream, and then deep, peaceful, restorative sleep. But before you completely drift away, we must speak of the greatest work of Mesopotamian literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This ancient story, older than Homer, older than the Bible, explores the deepest questions of human existence: friendship, mortality, the meaning of life, the fear of death, the limitations of power. Gilgamesh was a historical king of Uruk who reigned around 2700 BCE. Over centuries, legends accumulated around his name. He became a hero of superhuman strength and accomplishment. Eventually, these stories were woven into a coherent epic narrative. The fullest version we possess comes from tablets found in the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. dating to the 7th century BCE, but the core narrative is much older. The epic was so popular that it was translated into multiple ancient languages and spread across the ancient Near East. Gilgamesh, the story begins, is a mighty king but also a tyrant. He oppresses his people, claiming the right to sleep with every bride on her wedding night. The gods, hearing the people's complaints, create Enkidu, a wild man who lives with animals in the wilderness, as a rival and companion for Gilgamesh. Enkidu is civilized through the love of Shamhat, a temple prostitute. This isn't portrayed negatively. Through sexual intimacy, Enkidu gains knowledge and humanity. He can no longer live with the animals. He has become fully human, conscious and mortal. Enkidu comes to Uruk and fights Gilgamesh. Their battle is epic, shaking the foundations of buildings, but neither can defeat the other. Recognizing each other as equals, they become devoted friends. Together they undertake adventures, killing Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, slaying the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Ishtar after Gilgamesh rejects her sexual advances. But the gods, angered by these slayings, decree that one of the heroes must die. Enkidu falls ill, and after 12 days of suffering dies. Gilgamesh is devastated. He refuses to bury Enkidu until maggots fall from the body. He tears his hair, rips his clothes, and wanders into the wilderness, unable to accept his friend's death. More than grief, Gilgamesh experiences terror. If Enkidu could die, then Gilgamesh himself must also die someday. The greatest king, the mightiest hero, is ultimately just as mortal as the lowest slave. Death comes for everyone, regardless of strength, wealth, or wisdom. This realization drives Gilgamesh to seek immortality. He journeys to find Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood, who was granted eternal life by the gods. Gilgamesh crosses the mountains where the sun rises and sets, passes through the tunnel of darkness, convinces the ferryman to carry him across the waters of death. Finally, he reaches Utnapishtim, who lives in a distant paradise. Gilgamesh demands to know the secret of eternal life. Utnapishtim tells him the story of the flood, how he built an ark, survived the deluge, and earned immortality as a reward. But this was a one-time event. The gods will not grant Gilgamesh the same gift. Still, Utnapishtim offers Gilgamesh a test. If Gilgamesh can stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights, perhaps he can overcome mortality. But Gilgamesh, exhausted from his journey, immediately falls asleep and sleeps for 7 days. When he wakes, he realizes he has failed. If he cannot even resist sleep, the little brother of death, how can he hope to conquer death itself? As a consolation, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh about a plant growing at the bottom of the sea that can restore youth. Gilgamesh dives down, retrieves the plant, and begins his journey home. But when he stops to bathe in a pool, a serpent steals the plant and slithers away, shedding its skin and thus gaining the rejuvenation that Gilgamesh sought. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk empty-handed. He has not gained immortality, but he has gained wisdom. He realizes that immortality lies not in living forever, but in accomplishing great deeds that will be remembered. He shows his companion the walls of Uruk, which he built and which will stand for generations. His legacy will survive in stone and story. The epic ends as it began, with a description of Uruk's mighty walls. Go up on the wall of Uruk and walk around. Inspect the foundation platform and scrutinize the brickwork. See if its brickwork is not of burnt brick, and did not the 7 sages themselves lay out its foundation? This is the Mesopotamian answer to mortality. We cannot live forever as individuals, but civilization persists. Great works endure. Stories are told and retold. We are remembered, and in memory we achieve a kind of immortality. Sleep deeply now. Let Gilgamesh's journey comfort you. His struggle is the human struggle. His acceptance is the wisdom we all must find. Death comes for everyone, but until then, there is life to be lived, relationships to be cherished, works to be accomplished, beauty to be created and appreciated. You're sleeping now, or very nearly. But the story continues in your subconscious, weaving itself into your dreams. Let us speak briefly of the gods themselves, the Anunnaki and their multitude. For Mesopotamian religion was not simple or unified. Hundreds of deities existed, each with specific domains, personalities, and mythological narratives. Inanna, called Ishtar by the Akkadians, was goddess of love, sex, war, and political power. She was the planet Venus, the morning and evening star. Her mythology is rich and complex. In one myth, she descends to the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, Queen of the Dead. At each of the 7 gates she must remove a piece of clothing or jewellery until she arrives naked and powerless. Ereshkigal kills her and hangs her corpse on a hook, but the gods rescue Inanna. She is resurrected and ascends from the underworld. However, the laws of the cosmos require that someone must take her place. Inanna chooses her consort Dumuzi, who had not properly mourned her. Dumuzi flees, but is eventually captured and brought to the underworld. His sister Geshtinanna offers to spend half the year in the underworld in his place, so Dumuzi and Geshtinanna alternate, each spending 6 months among the dead. This myth explained the seasons. When Dumuzi was in the underworld, the land was barren. When he returned, vegetation flourished. Life, death, and rebirth were intertwined in the eternal cosmic cycle. Shamash, the sun god, travelled across the sky each day in his chariot, seeing all human actions. He was the god of justice because nothing could be hidden from his all-seeing eye. At night, he travelled through the underworld, bringing light and justice even to the dead. Nergal ruled the underworld with his consort Ereshkigal. He was a god of plague, war, and death, but not evil. The Mesopotamians didn't conceive of gods as morally good or evil, but as possessing power that could be beneficial or harmful depending on circumstances. Nergal was dangerous, but could be propitiated with proper worship. Ninurta was a warrior god, the champion of the gods, who defeated various monsters and demons. His exploits were celebrated in hymns and myths. He represented the triumph of order over chaos, civilization over wilderness. Nabu was the god of writing and scribal arts, son of Marduk. His temple at Borsippa, near Babylon, was a major centre of scholarship. Scribes prayed to Nabu for skill and accuracy. His symbol was the stylus. Each city had its patron deity, but all gods were worshipped throughout Mesopotamia. A person might pray to Shamash for justice in a legal dispute, to Inanna for success in love, to Ea for wisdom in solving a problem, to Ninurta for victory in war. The gods weren't jealous of worship given to others. They functioned as a cosmic bureaucracy, each with specific responsibilities. The Anunnaki were the great gods of this pantheon, the senior members of the Divine Assembly. They determined fates, established cosmic order, intervened in human history. They weren't omnipotent or omniscient. They could be deceived, could disagree with each other, could change their minds. They were, in a sense, superhuman rather than transcendent, and yet they were worthy of worship and awe. They had created humanity. They sustained the cosmos. Without their continued presence and favour, the world would collapse into chaos. Temples had to be maintained, offerings had to be made, rituals had to be performed with precise correctness. Float now among these gods. See them in your mind's eye. Anu on his celestial throne, Enlil commanding the winds, Enki crafting clever solutions, Inanna radiating beauty and danger, Marduk standing victorious over chaos. They are all watching over you, these ancient gods, their power undiminished by the passage of millennia. In dreams, all things are possible. In dreams you might walk with the Anunnaki themselves, receiving their wisdom, witnessing their counsels, understanding mysteries that elude waking consciousness. Let us turn now to the other great cities we have not yet explored. Babylon in its glory, particularly during the Neo-Babylonian period under Nebuchadnezzar II, who reigned from 605 to 562 BCE, was perhaps the most magnificent city of the ancient world. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing over a century later, claimed Babylon surpassed all other cities in splendour. The city was enormous, protected by massive double walls so wide that chariots could race along the top. 8 gates pierced these walls, each named for a god. The most famous was the Ishtar Gate, decorated with brilliant blue glazed bricks and reliefs of dragons and bulls, symbols of Marduk and Adad. The processional way, paved with limestone, led from the Ishtar Gate through the city to the temple complex. During the New Year festival, priests would parade statues of the gods along this route. The walls on either side were decorated with over 100 lions, symbol of Ishtar, striding in glazed brick relief. The temple complex, Esagila, housed the shrine of Marduk. Its name meant house whose top is high. Adjacent to it stood Itamananki, the great ziggurat we mentioned earlier, rising in 7 levels, its summit reaching toward the heavens. Nebuchadnezzar's palace was equally impressive. Vast courtyards, throne rooms with walls decorated in glazed brick, residential quarters for the royal family, administrative offices for the imperial bureaucracy. According to tradition, Nebuchadnezzar built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon for his wife, who missed the green mountains of her homeland. These gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, supposedly consisted of terraced gardens rising in massive step structures, with elaborate irrigation systems bringing water to the heights. Whether the Hanging Gardens actually existed at Babylon is debated by modern scholars. Some suggest they might have been at Nineveh instead, or might be legendary. But the story reveals what people believed about Babylon, that it contained marvels beyond the ordinary, that its rulers commanded resources and engineering capabilities that could reshape nature itself. Nebuchadnezzar was the king who conquered Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple, and brought the Jewish elite to Babylon as captives in 586 BCE. This Babylonian exile profoundly shaped Jewish religion and identity. Many biblical books were composed or edited during this period. The experience of exile, of maintaining identity while living in a foreign land, became central to Jewish theology and history. Interestingly, the Jewish exiles seem to have been reasonably well treated. They lived in communities, could engage in commerce, and maintained their religious practices. Some prospered and chose to remain in Babylon even when later permitted to return to Judea. These Jewish scribes in Babylon would have been surrounded by Mesopotamian culture. They saw the ziggurats, heard the myths of the Anunnaki, observed Babylonian festivals and rituals. Some biblical narratives bear clear influences from Mesopotamian sources. The flood story, the Tower of Babel, certain psalms echoing Mesopotamian hymns, wisdom literature resembling Mesopotamian proverbs. This cultural exchange enriched both traditions. The Babylonians learned from the monotheistic theology of the Jews. The Jews incorporated and adapted Mesopotamian literary forms and mythological motifs while maintaining their distinct religious identity. You're so deeply relaxed now. Your breathing is slow and even. The story flows over you and through you like a gentle river. You're part of this ancient narrative, connected to thousands of years of human culture and spiritual seeking. Let us move north and east to Assyria, the land of the fierce warrior kings, the builders of the last great Mesopotamian empire. Ashur, the ancient capital of Assyria, was named for the supreme Assyrian god. The city sat on the Tigris River in northern Mesopotamia, in a region that received more rainfall than the south, allowing rain-fed agriculture rather than complete dependence on irrigation. The Assyrians were Semitic speakers, closely related to the Babylonians linguistically and culturally, but they developed a distinct identity and political tradition. While Babylonia was the land of commerce, scholarship and refined culture, Assyria cultivated a reputation for military prowess and administrative efficiency. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, particularly from the 9th to 7th centuries BCE, dominated the ancient Near East through a combination of military might, terror tactics, and sophisticated provincial administration. Assyrian kings campaigned annually, expanding their territory, collecting tribute, and brutally punishing resistance. Assyrian palace reliefs depict these campaigns in graphic detail: sieges of cities, deportations of populations, impalement of prisoners, piles of severed heads. These weren't hidden atrocities but propaganda, meant to intimidate potential enemies into submission. The message was clear: resist and be destroyed, submit and be allowed to prosper under Assyrian rule. But Assyrian culture wasn't merely militaristic. The kings were also great builders and patrons of scholarship. Tiglath-Pileser I, who reigned in the 11th century BCE, collected tablets for a library at Ashur. He inscribed a curse on anyone who damaged or removed them. Whoever removes this tablet may Ashur and Ninlil angrily cast him down, erase his name and his seed from the land. Ashurbanipal, who reigned from 668 to 631 BCE, created the most famous library of the ancient world at Nineveh. He sent scribes throughout his empire to collect and copy texts. His library contained over 30,000 tablets, myths, epics, hymns, prayers, omens, medical texts, astronomical observations, mathematical calculations, dictionaries and scholarly commentaries. It was in Ashurbanipal's library that the Epic of Gilgamesh was rediscovered in the mid-19th century by Hormuzd Rassam, causing a sensation in Europe. Suddenly the Bible wasn't the oldest source of ancient Near Eastern mythology. There was a whole literature predating it, sophisticated and complex, challenging Victorian assumptions about cultural evolution and religious history. Nineveh, the greatest of the Assyrian capitals, was an enormous city. The prophet Jonah, in the biblical book bearing his name, is told that Nineveh contained 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, usually interpreted as children, suggesting a total population possibly exceeding 500,000. The city walls stretched for 12 kilometres, enclosing palaces, temples, parks and residential districts. The Palace of Sennacherib, who reigned from 705 to 681 BCE, covered 2 hectares and contained at least 80 rooms, many decorated with stone reliefs depicting the king's military victories and hunting exploits. One famous relief series shows Sennacherib's siege of Lachish in Judah. We see the Assyrian army surrounding the city, battering rams attacking the walls, archers providing covering fire, defenders hurling stones and torches, the city falling, prisoners being led away, officials counting severed heads to tally the dead. This isn't fantasy or exaggeration. Archaeological excavation at Lachish confirmed the Assyrian assault, finding arrowheads, sling stones, and evidence of the siege ramp exactly as depicted in the reliefs. Art and history aligned perfectly. Sennacherib also attacked Jerusalem during the reign of King Hezekiah around 701 BCE. The biblical account claims that the angel of the Lord struck down the Assyrian army, killing 185,000 soldiers in a single night, forcing Sennacherib to withdraw. Sennacherib's own inscriptions claim he besieged Jerusalem and imprisoned Hezekiah, like a bird in a cage, forcing him to pay enormous tribute, but don't claim to have captured the city. What actually happened? Perhaps plague struck the Assyrian camp. Perhaps Sennacherib received news of troubles elsewhere requiring his attention. Perhaps Hezekiah paid enough tribute to satisfy Assyrian honour. The truth is lost to time, remembered differently by different peoples, each shaping the narrative to their own purposes. Drift now through the halls of Sennacherib's palace. See the massive stone bulls with human heads, called lamassu, that guarded the gates. Each weighs dozens of tons, carved from single blocks of stone transported from distant quarries. They represent protective spirits, deterring evil, demonstrating the king's power to command resources and labour. Walk past the relief showing lion hunts. These weren't wild hunts, but ritualised events. Lions, symbols of chaos and danger, were released in an enclosed arena. The king, demonstrating his valour and his role as protector of civilization, would kill them with bow, spear and sword while safely surrounded by guards. This wasn't about personal bravery, but about symbolic performance, the king enacting his cosmic role as vanquisher of chaos. Feel the weight of empire, the burden of maintaining order over vast territories, the constant threat of rebellion and invasion. The Assyrian kings carried this burden through fear and force, building an empire that seemed eternal, but proved ultimately fragile. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Medes and Babylonians besieged Nineveh. The city fell after 3 months. The Assyrian Empire, which had dominated the Near East for centuries, collapsed within a few years. Nineveh was so thoroughly destroyed that within 2 centuries its location was forgotten. The city became a mound of ruins, slowly buried by wind-blown soil, home to jackals and owls, exactly as the prophets had foretold. Let the fall of mighty Nineveh remind you of impermanence. All things pass. Great empires rise and crumble. Magnificent cities return to dust. Only the eternal cycles continue. Day and night, the seasons, birth and death, the endless flow of the rivers toward the sea. You're sleeping now, or nearly. But the story continues, winding toward its conclusion like the Tigris and Euphrates winding toward the Persian Gulf. After Assyria fell, Babylon rose once more to dominance under the Chaldean or Neo-Babylonian dynasty. Nebuchadnezzar made Babylon the greatest city in the world. But this final flowering of Mesopotamian independence was brief. In 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon without a fight. The city gates opened to welcome him. The Persian Empire, vaster than anything before, now ruled Mesopotamia. The ancient Sumerian and Akkadian traditions would continue under foreign rule, gradually fading as new cultures and religions emerged. The Achaemenid Persians were relatively tolerant rulers. They allowed local traditions and religious practices to continue. The Jewish exiles were permitted to return to Judea and rebuild their temple. Babylon remained an important city, one of the capitals of the Persian Empire. But something was changing. The old gods, the Anunnaki who had ruled for millennia, were losing their hold on human imagination. Monotheism was rising. Judaism, and later Christianity and Islam, would eventually replace the old polytheisms. The ancient temples would be abandoned, the rituals forgotten, the myths preserved only in buried tablets waiting for archaeologists millennia in the future. In 331 BCE, Alexander the Great defeated the Persians and claimed Mesopotamia. He intended to make Babylon his capital, planning to restore its temples and rebuild the Anunnaki ziggurat. But Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BCE at age 32, his empire fragmenting immediately. Babylon declined under the Seleucid Greeks and later under the Parthians. By the time the Romans fought the Parthians for control of Mesopotamia, Babylon was largely abandoned. The great ziggurat was a crumbling ruin. The temples were empty. The processional way was buried in sand. For almost 2,000 years, Mesopotamian civilization was forgotten. The cuneiform script became illegible. Travellers passing by mounds of ruins had no idea they were looking at or Uruk or Babylon. The Anunnaki survived only in fragments preserved in classical authors or biblical texts, their original context lost. Then, in the 19th century, archaeologists began digging. The ruins gave up their secrets. Tablets were deciphered. The Sumerian king list was translated. The Epic of Gilgamesh was read for the first time in millennia. The ancient world spoke again. We now know more about ancient Mesopotamia than has been known for 2,000 years. Every year brings new discoveries, new tablets, new interpretations, new insights into this foundational civilization. What are we to make of the Anunnaki? Were they, as ancient alien theorists suggest, extraterrestrial visitors who genetically engineered humanity and gave us civilization? Or were they what they appear to be in the texts, mythological explanations for natural phenomena and human institutions, deities who embodied and personified the forces that shaped Mesopotamian life? The evidence overwhelmingly supports the latter interpretation. The Anunnaki fit perfectly into the context of ancient Near Eastern religious thought. Their characteristics, their myths, their relationships mirror those of gods from neighbouring cultures. The archaeological record shows civilization developing gradually over thousands of years, not appearing suddenly fully formed. But perhaps the literal truth of the myths isn't the point. The Anunnaki represented humanity's earliest attempts to understand existence. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What is our relationship to the cosmos? Why is there suffering? What happens after death? The Mesopotamians looked at the world and saw it filled with power and personality. The storm wasn't just meteorological phenomena, but Enlil expressing his will. The ocean wasn't just water, but Enki's domain. The planet Venus wasn't just a celestial body, but the goddess Inanna in her celestial aspect. This animistic, polytheistic worldview may seem primitive to modern minds, but it reflected a deep engagement with the mystery and complexity of existence. The myths aren't naive stories, but sophisticated theological and philosophical explorations. The story of Gilgamesh grappling with mortality remains profoundly relevant. We still fear death, still seek meaning in the face of our inevitable end, still find solace in accomplishment and legacy. The lamentations for destroyed cities still resonate when we see modern cities devastated by war. The Code of Hammurabi's attempt to establish justice through law remains our aspiration. We are the inheritors of Mesopotamian civilization. Our alphabetic writing descends from systems developed there. Our division of time into base 60 units, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle, comes from Mesopotamian mathematics. Our astronomical tradition begins with Mesopotamian star catalogues and planetary observations. Our legal systems trace back to those ancient codes. Even our creation myths and flood stories echo those first told in Sumer. When we look at the ancient ruins, the crumbling ziggurats, the tablets covered in cuneiform, we're looking at our own deep past. This is where we came from. This is the foundation upon which all subsequent civilizations built. Rest now in this knowledge. You are part of an unbroken chain stretching back 7,000 years. The same stars that shone on ancient Ur shine on you tonight. The same questions that troubled Gilgamesh still trouble us. The same yearning for meaning, for connection, for transcendence drives us still. The ancient Mesopotamians found their answers in the Anunnaki, in the great temples, in the orderly procession of rituals and festivals, in the preservation of knowledge on clay tablets. We seek our answers in different ways, but we're seeking the same things: understanding, purpose, comfort in the face of mortality. As you sleep tonight, the ancient world doesn't vanish. It lives on in you, in the foundations of your culture, in the deep structures of your thought. The Anunnaki may have faded, but the human spirit they represented endures. Let yourself drift completely now. The story is finished, or rather, it has no ending because it continues in you. Every breath you take connects you to those first humans who wondered at the stars and imagined gods walking among them. Every dream you dream echoes the dreams of scribes and priests in ancient temples. Every question you ask was first asked in Sumer. Sleep peacefully, traveller. Sleep deeply. The lost cities of Mesopotamia are not truly lost. They live in memory, in scholarship, in the echoes they left in all subsequent civilizations. They live in these words, in your imagination, in the realm of dreams where past and present merge into eternal now. The rivers still flow, the stars still shine, the ancient stories still speak, and you, resting now in perfect peace, are part of that eternal story, a single thread in the vast tapestry of human existence. Good night, sleepless survivor. May your dreams take you to Ur and Uruk, to Babylon and Nineveh, to the temples and palaces of the ancient world. May you walk with kings and scribes, priests and merchants, farmers and warriors. May you see the ziggurats in their glory, the Anunnaki in their power, the civilization that birthed all civilizations. And may you wake tomorrow refreshed, carrying with you the wisdom of the ancients, that life is short but precious, that civilization is fragile but worth defending, that meaning must be created, not found, that mortality gives urgency and beauty to existence, that we are remembered in our deeds and in the stories told about us. Sleep now. Rest completely. The ancient world watches over you, timeless and patient, waiting in the space between waking and dreaming, between memory and imagination, between the past that shaped us and the future we will create. The Tigris and Euphrates flow on, as they have for millions of years, as they will for millions more. On their banks the first cities rose, from their waters the first civilizations drew life. In their flood plains, humanity took its first steps toward the complex interconnected world we inhabit today. And somewhere, in the realm of myth and imagination, the Anunnaki watch still, those mysterious beings who walked between gods and mortals, who brought knowledge from the heavens, who shaped humanity and were shaped by us in turn. Whether they were gods or aliens, myths or memories, they remain with us, part of our collective inheritance, our shared story of where we came from and who we are. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, let the ancient world embrace you. You are safe here, in this moment, in this place between waking and sleeping. All the stories have been told, all the questions have been asked. Now there is only rest, only peace, only the gentle descent into deep, restorative, healing sleep. The mounds of ancient cities rise silent beneath the stars. The tablets sleep in museum cases, their secrets read, but their mysteries unexhausted. The ziggurats crumble, but their memory endures, and the Anunnaki, whether they ever truly walked the earth or existed only in imagination, have given us something precious, a connection to our deepest past, a reminder of our eternal questions, a story that spans the centuries and will continue as long as humans wonder about the stars and dream of gods. Sleep, traveller, sleep and dream. Dream of ancient Mesopotamia, dream of the Anunnaki, dream of lost cities rising from the dust, dream of humanity in its youth, taking its first steps towards civilization. Dream of temples and rivers, kings and gods, myths and mysteries, and when you wake, carry this with you. We are the descendants of those first city dwellers. Their blood flows in our veins, their dreams echo in our souls, their questions remain our questions, their hopes remain our hopes. We are all Mesopotamians, we are all heirs to Sumer, we are all children of the Anunnaki, whether we believe in them or not, because they represent humanity's first attempts to understand itself and its place in the cosmos. Rest now in perfect peace. The journey is complete, the story is told, the ancient world has shared its secrets, and now, finally, mercifully, beautifully, sleep claims you completely. Good night, sleepless survivor. May the Anunnaki watch over your dreams. May the lost cities of Mesopotamia live again in your imagination. May you rest deeply and wake renewed. The end and the beginning. For every ending is a new beginning. Every sleep leads to waking. Every story told becomes part of the eternal human story that continues, generation after generation, age after age, from ancient Sumer to this very moment and beyond. Sleep well. And so we continue our journey through the depths of night, through the layers of ancient history, deeper and deeper into the mysteries of Mesopotamia and the enigmatic Anunnaki who shaped the destiny of humanity's first civilizations. Perhaps you're still awake, still listening, still resisting the inevitable pull of sleep. That's all right. We have all night. We have all the time in the world. There is so much more to explore, so many more stories to tell, so many more secrets of the ancient world to unveil. Let us return to the beginning, but from a different angle. Let us consider the very landscape itself, the geography that made Mesopotamian civilization possible, and that shaped the character of its people and their gods. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers begin in the mountains of eastern Anatolia, in what is now Turkey. Snow melts in spring, sending torrents of water southward through deep gorges, across high plateaus, eventually emerging onto the broad flat plains of Mesopotamia. The Tigris, swift and unpredictable, prone to violent floods. The Euphrates, broader and calmer, though no less essential. These rivers brought life to an otherwise harsh land. The Mesopotamian plain receives minimal rainfall, especially in the south. Without the rivers, the land would be desert, unable to support more than scattered nomadic groups. But with the rivers came water, silt, fertility, and the possibility of surplus agriculture. Surplus agriculture is the foundation of civilization. When farmers can produce more food than they need for immediate consumption, some people can specialize in other activities. Craftsmen can focus on pottery, metallurgy, or weaving. Priests can maintain temples and perform rituals. Scribes can develop writing systems. Rulers can organize defensive forces and public works. Artists can create beauty. Scholars can study the stars and ponder existence. All of this requires surplus, and surplus requires water, and water came from the rivers, which the Mesopotamians saw as manifestations of divine power. The rivers were not mere physical phenomena, but living entities, expressions of the Anunnaki's will and generosity. Breathe slowly as you imagine these rivers. See them in your mind, broad, brown with silt, lined with date palms and reeds. Feel their presence, their power, their life-giving force flowing through the desert. Hear the water lapping against the banks. Smell the moisture in the air, so precious in that arid climate. The Mesopotamians developed sophisticated irrigation systems to harness the river's power. Canals carried water to distant fields. Dikes protected settlements from floods. Reservoirs stored water for dry seasons. This hydraulic engineering required coordination, planning, and central authority. Some scholars argue that the need to manage irrigation created the first governments. Communities had to cooperate to dig and maintain canals. Disputes about water rights had to be adjudicated. Someone had to organize labour for large projects. Thus, political hierarchy emerged from hydrological necessity. Whether or not this hydraulic hypothesis fully explains the rise of civilization, it's clear that water management was central to Mesopotamian life. Kings boasted in their inscriptions about digging canals and building dikes. Gods were praised for maintaining the cosmic waters. The Abzu, the freshwater ocean beneath the earth, was Enki's domain, the source of all springs, wells, and rivers. The Mesopotamians lived in a world where water meant life and its absence meant death. Their entire existence depended on the river's annual cycle. Too little flooding, and crops would fail, bringing famine. Too much flooding, and settlements would be destroyed, livestock drowned, fields washed away. This precarious balance shaped Mesopotamian psychology and theology. The gods were powerful but capricious. They provided abundance but could also bring catastrophe. Humanity's role was to serve the gods through ritual and offering. maintaining cosmic order and hopefully ensuring divine favour. Let yourself sink deeper into this ancient mindset. Feel the anxiety of depending on forces beyond your control. Feel also the relief when the flood comes at the right time, bringing rich silt to renew the fields. Feel gratitude for the gods' continued blessing. The uncertainty of Mesopotamian life stands in contrast to Egypt, where the Nile flooded predictably each year, bringing reliable fertility. Perhaps this explains differences in the two civilizations' outlooks. Egyptian religion emphasized stability, eternal order, the triumph of life over death. Mesopotamian religion was more anxious, more focused on appeasing potentially hostile divine forces. The Mesopotamian underworld, Ker or Akala, was a gloomy place where the dead existed as shadows. Unlike the Egyptian paradise available to those who passed judgment, the Mesopotamian afterlife offered little comfort. The dead ate dust and clay, they dwelt in darkness, they were cut off from the living world. This bleak vision of death made earthly life all the more precious. One had to accomplish everything, experience everything, enjoy everything, before death ended all possibility. The Epic of Gilgamesh expresses this philosophy through the words of Siduri, the divine barmaid, who advises the hero, "Gilgamesh, where are you wandering? You will never find the eternal life that you seek. When the gods created mankind, they established death for mankind and withheld eternal life for themselves. But you, Gilgamesh, let your belly be full. Enjoy yourself always by day and by night. Make merry each day, dance and play day and night. Let your clothes be clean, let your head be washed, may you bathe in water. Gaze on the child who holds your hand, let your wife enjoy your repeated embrace. This is the work of mankind. This is wisdom worth carrying into your dreams. Enjoy life while you can. Love those around you. Find pleasure in simple things. Accept mortality rather than raging against it. Create meaning through relationships and experiences rather than seeking impossible immortality. Let these words comfort you as you drift towards sleep. You're alive now, in this moment. You're comfortable and safe. Tomorrow will bring its own concerns, but tonight there is only rest, only peace, only the gentle embrace of sleep carrying you away from consciousness. Now let us speak more of the Sumerian language itself, that ancient tongue, one of the oldest written languages known to humanity, and one of the most mysterious. Sumerian is what linguists call a language isolate, meaning it has no known relationship to any other language family. It is neither Semitic like Akkadian, Hebrew and Arabic, nor Indo-European like Persian, Greek and Sanskrit. Its origins are unknown. Where the Sumerians came from before they settled in southern Mesopotamia remains one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. The language itself is agglutinative, building complex words by stringing together many morphemes, each carrying specific meaning. A single Sumerian word might convey what requires an entire sentence in English. The grammar is completely unlike anything familiar to speakers of European languages. Writing Sumerian in cuneiform presented unique challenges. The script began as pictographs, simple drawings representing objects or concepts. A foot meant to go or to stand. A mouth meant to speak, or word. A star meant both the physical star and the concept of divinity or heaven. Over time, these pictographs became increasingly abstract, eventually evolving into combinations of wedge-shaped marks. Cuneiform, from the Latin cuneus, meaning wedge. The same sign might represent an object, a sound, or an abstract concept depending on context. Reading cuneiform required extensive training and contextual understanding. Young scribes spent years mastering the script. They began with simple signs, progressing to more complex combinations, eventually learning the hundreds of possible readings for each sign. They memorized vast word lists, copied literary texts, and practiced writing on clay tablets that could be smoothed and reused until the student achieved proficiency. Imagine yourself as one of these ancient students. You sit cross-legged on a mud brick floor in the tablet house, the Aduba. Your teacher, stern and demanding, paces the room. Before you lies a damp clay tablet, freshly prepared. In your right hand you hold a stylus cut from reed. You begin pressing the stylus into the clay, forming wedges, horizontal wedges, vertical wedges, diagonal wedges, combining into complex signs. Your hand cramps. Your back aches from sitting. The teacher strikes students who make errors. You concentrate intensely trying to remember, does this sign represent water, or the sound A, or the god Enki? Context will determine it, but first you must write it correctly. The texts you copy speak of the Anunnaki. You learn their names, their attributes, their genealogies. Anu, the highest heaven. Enlil, Lord Air. Enki, Lord Earth. Ninhursag, Lady of the Stony Ground. Nana, Queen of Heaven. These aren't just names, but cosmic principles, forces that structure reality. Through repetition, through copying these texts day after day, month after month, year after year, you internalize not just the writing system, but the entire worldview it encodes. You come to see the universe as the Sumerians saw it, a cosmos governed by divine beings, where every aspect of existence reflects the will and nature of the gods. Let yourself rest in this ancient knowledge. Feel the clay beneath your hands, smell the damp earth, hear the scratch of dozens of stuli on tablets, the murmur of students reciting lessons, the occasional sharp word from the teacher. You are becoming one of the educated elite, one of the few who can read and write, who can access humanity's accumulated knowledge, who can communicate across time and space through marks pressed into clay. This is power. This is privilege. This is responsibility. The texts you copy will survive for thousands of years. Archaeologists in the distant future will excavate these tablets, decipher them, and through them glimpse your world. You're not just learning, you're preserving. You're not just copying, you're transmitting civilization itself to future generations. Rest now in the comfort of this continuity. The scribes of ancient Sumer preserved their knowledge for us. We preserve our knowledge for those who will come after. The chain remains unbroken. Human consciousness reaches backward and forward through time, each generation learning from the past and teaching the future. Let us turn our attention now to the sacred marriage ritual, one of the most important religious ceremonies in ancient Mesopotamia, a ritual that united heaven and earth, gods and mortals, fertility and kingship. This sacred marriage, or hieros gamos, reenacted the mythological union between Inanna, goddess of love and fertility, and Dumuzi, the shepherd god. This divine marriage ensured the fertility of the land, the prosperity of the people, and the legitimacy of the king's rule. During the New Year festival, the king of the city would take on the role of Dumuzi. A high priestess would embody Inanna. In the temple, before the assembled priests and nobles, the sacred marriage would be consummated, literally or symbolically. Scholars debate this point. Hymns were sung describing the beauty of the goddess, the virility of the god, the joy of their union. The ceremony culminated in a ritual feast, celebrating the renewal of life, the victory of order over chaos, the continuation of the cosmic cycles. This wasn't viewed as primitive or barbaric by the Mesopotamians, but as essential to maintaining universal order. The king, as representative of humanity, united with the goddess, as representative of divine fertility. Their union blessed the land, ensured good harvests, and renewed the king's divine mandate to rule. One beautiful hymn, the Song of the Hoe, describes Enlil using a hoe to break through the earth's crust at a place called Uzumua, the flesh grower. From this opening emerged humanity, growing from the earth like plants. The gods then taught humans agriculture, so they would use hoes to till the soil and grow food. This myth connects human origins to agriculture, suggesting we are literally children of the earth, meant to cultivate and care for it. Our purpose is to work the soil, produce food, offer sustenance to the gods, and maintain civilization. Modern readers might find this utilitarian view of humanity's purpose disappointing. We like to think we're here for grander reasons, to seek truth, create beauty, explore the universe, achieve enlightenment. The Mesopotamians were more practical. We're here to work, to maintain order, to serve the gods who created us. Yet there's dignity in this too. Work isn't punishment, but purpose. Cultivation isn't drudgery, but sacred duty. The farmer tilling his field is participating in cosmic maintenance, continuing the work Enlil began with the first hoe, ensuring that chaos doesn't reclaim the ordered world. Let yourself appreciate this ancient perspective. Work isn't separate from spirituality, but an expression of it. Every act of creation, every productive effort, every attempt to bring order from chaos echoes the gods' original creative acts. Rest in this understanding. Your life has purpose not because you achieve extraordinary things, but because you participate in the ordinary miracle of maintaining existence. You work, you create, you care for others, you contribute to the ongoing project of civilization. This is enough. This is everything. Breathe deeply and slowly. Feel your connection to the earth, to the soil, to the ancient farmers who first broke ground with hoes and planted seeds. You are their descendant, not just genetically but spiritually, continuing the work they began, maintaining the civilization they built. The goddess Nisaba deserves special mention as the deity of writing, grain and wisdom. She was the scribe of the gods, keeping the divine records, measuring out each person's lifespan, recording all deeds for judgment after death. Scribes prayed to Nisaba before beginning their work. They asked her to guide their hands, grant them accuracy, help them avoid errors. One prayer to Nisaba asks her to open my ears and make my hands skillful, acknowledging that the ability to read and write is a divine gift, not merely a learned skill. Interestingly, Nisaba was also goddess of grain, reflecting the connection between writing and agriculture. Both involve careful cultivation, patience, and attention to detail. Both transform raw material, soil or clay, into something valuable, food or knowledge. Both require planning for the future, storing surplus against times of need. The first written documents from Mesopotamia were agricultural records, lists of grain received, distributed, and stored. Writing emerged from the need to track complex economic transactions as communities grew larger and more complex. Before writing, memory and oral tradition sufficed. With writing, transactions could be recorded with perfect accuracy, disputes could be resolved by consulting records, and administrators could manage vast estates efficiently. Writing transformed human consciousness in profound ways. With writing, ideas could be examined, revised, and refined in ways impossible with purely oral tradition. Complex legal codes could be promulgated. Religious traditions could be standardized. History could be recorded rather than merely remembered. The past could speak directly to the present. The Mesopotamians understood writing's power. They saw it as a gift from the gods, a sacred technology that elevated humanity closer to the divine. To be literate was to participate in something larger than oneself, to join a community of knowledge keepers stretching across generations. Float gently now through the tablet house of the gods, where Nisaba records all deeds on celestial tablets. See the walls lined with shelves holding millions of tablets, recording every human life in minute detail. Nothing is forgotten, nothing is lost. Every word spoken, every deed done, every thought is preserved in the divine archive. This isn't meant to be frightening but comforting. Your life matters. Your actions have significance. You're not forgotten or insignificant but recorded, remembered, part of the permanent record of existence. Let this knowledge settle over you like a blanket. You are known, you are seen, you are valued. The universe acknowledges your existence. Rest in this certainty. We should speak now of the demons and monsters that populated Mesopotamian imagination. For the ancient world was not just home to gods, but also to malevolent entities that threatened cosmic order. Pazuzu, with his lion's head, eagle's talons, scorpion's tail and 4 wings, was king of the wind demons. Terrifying in appearance, Pazuzu was paradoxically invoked for protection, particularly against Lamashtu, the most feared demon of all. Lamashtu was a fallen goddess who preyed on pregnant women and infants. She would enter homes at night, stealing babies from their cradles, bringing disease, causing miscarriages. New mothers wore amulets depicting Pazuzu to ward off Lamashtu, invoking one demon to protect against another. The Mesopotamians developed extensive demonology and corresponding protective rituals. Diseases were attributed to demonic possession. Nightmares came from demons sitting on the sleeper's chest. Mental illness was caused by demons entering the body. Exorcists called Ashipu specialized in diagnosing demonic afflictions and performing rituals to drive out malevolent entities. These weren't primitive superstitions, but sophisticated systems of diagnosis and treatment that combined religious ritual, herbal medicine, and psychological insight. An exorcism ritual might involve burning incense to purify the space, reciting incantations to compel the demon to depart, and administering herbs to treat physical symptoms. The patient would be washed, dressed in clean garments, and given protective amulets to prevent repossession. Modern medicine might dismiss this as ignorance, but consider, the rituals provided psychological relief, the herbs often had genuine medicinal properties, and the social support of community members performing elaborate rituals probably aided recovery. The theoretical framework was wrong, but the practical results were sometimes effective. More importantly, these beliefs provided explanatory frameworks for suffering. When a child died, it wasn't random misfortune but Lamashtu's attack. When someone fell ill, it wasn't mere biology but demonic interference. This made suffering explicable, if not less painful, and suggested remedies rather than helpless acceptance. Drift now through the shadowy realm where demons dwell. See Pazuzu's terrible face, lion-like and fierce. See Lamashtu creeping through darkened streets. See the countless nameless demons that cause minor misfortunes, broken tools, spoiled food, arguments between friends. But see also the protective deities, the beneficial spirits, the guardian figures who stand watch against malevolence. See the Lamassu at the city gates, massive and powerful, turning away evil. See the household gods tucked into niches, watching over families. See the amulets and talismans, physical reminders of divine protection. You are safe from these ancient demons. They have no power in the modern world. But the fears they represented, disease, death, loss, suffering, remain universal. We still seek protection, still hope for safety, still want to believe that someone or something watches over us. Let the protective deities of ancient Mesopotamia watch over you tonight. Let Pazuzu stand guard. Let the Lamassu protect your dreams. Let Nisaba record your worthiness. Let Enki grant you wisdom even in sleep. You are protected. You are safe. Nothing can harm you here. Rest deeply in this knowledge. The Mesopotamian concept of me, pronounced May, deserves exploration. These were divine decrees or ordinances that governed all aspects of civilization and nature. The me were not laws imposed arbitrarily, but the fundamental properties that made things what they were. There were me for kingship, for priesthood, for warfare, for music, for writing, for judgeship, for truth-telling, for art, for heroism, for fear, for treachery. Everything that existed had its corresponding me, defining its essential nature and proper function. The me were physical objects, portable and transferable. In one myth, Inanna and Enki, the goddess Inanna visits Enki in his Abzu. Enki, becoming drunk on beer, gives Inanna the me of civilization, over 100 divine decrees including the me of kingship, priestly office, sexual intercourse, prostitution, law, truthfulness, falsehood, art, music, eldership, heroism, power, enmity, straightforwardness, descent into the underworld, and many more. Inanna loads the me onto her boat of heaven and flees. When Enki sobers up and realizes what he's done, he sends demons to retrieve the me. But Inanna's minister Ninchubur helps her escape, and she successfully brings the me to her city Uruk, making it the center of civilization. This myth explains Uruk's preeminence and Inanna's importance, but it also reveals something about Mesopotamian metaphysics. Civilization's essential properties exist as distinct, transferable things. Culture isn't abstract, but concrete. Knowledge, skills, and institutions can be given, stolen, or lost. This is profoundly different from modern Western thought, which tends to see properties as abstract qualities inhering in things. For the Mesopotamians, the me were real objects, as tangible as grain or gold, that could be possessed, exchanged, or lost. If a city lost its me of prosperity, it would fall into poverty. If a king lost the me of kingship, his reign would fail. If an individual somehow obtained the me of wisdom or heroism, they would become wise or heroic. Let this strange metaphysics settle in your drowsy mind. Don't try to fully understand it. Just let it wash over you, adding another layer to your appreciation of how differently the ancients conceived reality. Imagine the me as glowing objects, perhaps tablet-shaped, perhaps like precious stones, each containing the essential nature of some aspect of reality. Imagine them carefully stored in Enki's shrine in the Abzu. Imagine Inanna gathering them up, her eyes shining with triumph and perhaps a little guilt, knowing she's stealing the foundations of civilization from the god of wisdom himself. This is a goddess who dares, who takes risks, who refuses to accept limitations. Inanna embodies feminine power in all its complexity: sexual allure, political ambition, divine authority, willingness to descend into the underworld and return transformed. She's not a tame goddess, not merely nurturing or protective, but dangerous, transgressive, revolutionary. The ancient world's goddesses were powerful in ways that patriarchal traditions later diminished. Inanna commanded respect and worship. She was queen of heaven and earth, not relegated to some subordinate position. The fact that she could trick Enki, the god of wisdom himself, and steal the me demonstrates her cleverness and audacity. Rest now in the presence of these powerful divine feminine forces. Feel their strength, their independence, their refusal to be controlled or limited. Whether or not you believe in them literally, their symbolic power remains. The assertion that feminine power is divine, that women possess authority not granted by men but inherent in their nature. Let Inanna watch over your dreams tonight. She who descended to the underworld and returned, she who stole the me of civilization, she who commands love and war with equal authority. The Mesopotamian flood myth appears in multiple versions: the Sumerian Eridu, Genesis, the Akkadian Atrahasis, and within the Epic of Gilgamesh. The basic narrative remains consistent. The gods decide to destroy humanity with a flood, but one god warns a righteous man who builds a boat and saves his family and animals. The parallels with the biblical Noah story are striking and unmistakable. The biblical version clearly derives from earlier Mesopotamian traditions, probably transmitted during the Babylonian exile. But there are significant differences too. In the Mesopotamian version, the gods decide to send the flood because humanity's noise disturbs their rest. This is a petty, almost comic motivation. Enlil can't sleep because humans are too loud, so he decides to exterminate them all. Enki objects, not because genocide is wrong, but because humanity serves useful functions for the gods. Without humans, who will maintain the temples? Who will provide offerings? Who will do the work the gods don't want to do themselves? So Enki secretly warns Atrahasis or Utnapishtim, depending on the version. He speaks to the wall of the man's reed house, technically keeping his promise not to reveal the god's plan to humans, while still ensuring that the plan fails. The righteous man builds an enormous boat, waterproofs it with bitumen, loads his family and animals aboard. The flood comes, lasting 7 days and nights. Even the gods are terrified by the destruction, cowering like dogs against the outer walls of heaven. When the waters recede, the man releases birds to test whether dry land has appeared. First a dove, which returns finding no perch, then a swallow, which also returns. Finally a raven, which doesn't return, indicating land is available. The man offers sacrifice. The gods, having been deprived of offerings during the flood, gather like flies around the sacrifice, hungry for the food and drink they've missed. This is such a different portrait of divinity than the biblical God who sends the flood as judgment for sin and saves Noah because of his righteousness. The Mesopotamian gods are powerful, but also flawed, petty, dependent on humanity even as they threaten to destroy us. Which is more comforting, an all-powerful God who judges righteously, but whose standards we might fail to meet, or powerful but flawed gods who need us almost as much as we need them? The Mesopotamian answer seems more democratic, less hierarchical. Gods and humans exist in relationship, each providing something the other needs. Humans need divine favour and protection. Gods need human service and worship. It's a reciprocal arrangement, not absolute dominion and submission. Float now on the flood waters. Feel the boat rocking beneath you. Hear the rain hammering the roof, the thunder crashing, the cries of those who didn't believe the warnings and now perish in the rising waters. But you're safe in the ark. The boat is sound, carefully constructed, sealed with pitch. Your family surrounds you. The animals huddle together, nervous but protected. Outside is chaos and destruction. Inside is safety and order. This is the promise of civilization, that humans can create zones of safety and order in a chaotic and dangerous universe. We build boats against floods, walls against enemies, granaries against famine, temples to maintain divine favour. We are not helpless before chaos, but can resist it, survive it, eventually rebuild after it. When the flood recedes and dry land appears, life begins again, the same but different. The world has been cleansed and renewed. Those who survived have been tested and proven worthy. The future opens up with new possibilities. Let yourself rest in the ark of sleep, safe from the chaos of waking consciousness, protected during this necessary period of inactivity and renewal. Tomorrow you will emerge like the flood hero onto dry land, ready to rebuild and begin again. But tonight, there is only the Ark, only safety, only rest. The city of Babylon deserves more attention, for it became synonymous with urban grandeur, imperial power, cultural achievement, and eventually, in biblical tradition, with sin and corruption. The name Babylon comes from Akkadian Babilim, meaning Gate of the Gods. The Sumerians called it Kadingir-Ra, which means the same thing. This wasn't mere hyperbole. The city was literally conceived as the place where heaven and earth connected, where gods descended to interact with humanity. Babylon's origins are obscure. It was a minor town during the Sumerian period, overshadowed by Uruk, Nippur, and other more prestigious cities. But its location was strategic, near the point where the Tigris and Euphrates come closest together, controlling trade routes between north and south. Under Hammurabi in the 18th century BCE, Babylon became the capital of a unified Mesopotamian empire. Though this empire fragmented after Hammurabi's death, Babylon retained its prestige. Whoever controlled Babylon could claim legitimacy to rule all of Mesopotamia. The Kassites ruled Babylon for over 4 centuries, from roughly 1600 to 1155 BCE. We know frustratingly little about these people. Their language is poorly understood, their origins are debated, but they maintained Mesopotamian cultural traditions, supported temples, commissioned literary works, and gave Babylon centuries of relative stability. After the Kassites came a period of fragmentation and foreign invasions. Babylon was sacked multiple times, but the city always recovered, its cultural prestige intact even when its political power waned. Then came the Neo-Babylonian or Chaldean dynasty in the 7th century BCE. Under Nabopolassar and especially his son Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon achieved its greatest glory. The city was rebuilt on a massive scale, becoming the largest and most magnificent urban centre in the world. Let yourself walk through Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon in your imagination. You enter through the Ishtar Gate, brilliant blue glazed bricks decorated with golden bulls and dragons. The gate towers above you, enormous and overwhelming. Guards stand at attention. Officials examine travellers and merchants entering the city. You pass through onto the processional way. The avenue stretches before you, paved with limestone wide enough for chariots to ride abreast. The walls on either side rise high, decorated with striding lions in glazed brick, over 100 of them, their tawny bodies and fierce faces seeming almost alive. The street is crowded. Merchants from distant lands speak in unfamiliar tongues. Slaves carry burdens on their backs or heads. Officials in fine clothing ride in carts. Priests in white linen walk in groups, heading toward the temple complex. Children dart through the crowd, playing games, chasing each other. The smell is overwhelming. Incense from the temples, bread baking, spices from market stalls, livestock, unwashed bodies, perfume on wealthy women, bitumen used for construction, river water, sun-baked brick. The sound is almost deafening. Voices calling in Akkadian, Aramaic, Persian and other languages. Merchants haggling, musicians playing, the clop of horse hooves on stone, cartwheels squeaking, dogs barking, metalworkers hammering, weavers' looms clicking, priests chanting. You make your way toward the temple complex at the city's heart. The ziggurat Etemenanki rises before you, 7 levels of brick reaching toward the sky, each level painted a different colour. Black, white, red, blue, orange, silver, and gold at the summit. You join the crowd ascending the great staircases. The climb is long and tiring, but with each level, the city spreads out further below you. You see the Euphrates River flowing through Babylon, spanned by the bridge that connects the eastern and western parts of the city. You see the palace complex, vast and elaborate, gardens visible within its walls. You see residential districts stretching to the city walls and beyond. At the summit, you reach the shrine of Marduk. The view is breathtaking. The entire world seems spread below you. You can see fields extending to the horizon, other cities as distant smudges, caravans travelling the roads. You're at the centre of the universe, at the axis mundi where earth and heaven meet. The priest offers incense before Marduk's statue. The smoke rises toward the heavens, carrying prayers and offerings to the gods. For a moment the boundary between mortal and divine seems thin. You feel the presence of something greater, something vast and ancient and powerful. Then you descend, returning to the streets, to ordinary life, to the daily business of buying and selling, working and eating, living and dying. But you carry with you the memory of that moment at the ziggurat summit, that glimpse of transcendence, that connection to the divine. Rest now in that memory. Feel yourself at the centre of the universe, where heaven and earth touch. You are exactly where you need to be. All is well. The gods watch over you. The cosmic order holds firm. Sleep descends like smoke rising from incense, carrying you upward toward divine realms, or downward into the depths of unconsciousness. Up and down lose meaning in the world of dreams. The Jewish exiles in Babylon, who arrived after Jerusalem's destruction in 586 BCE, must have been amazed and appalled by what they saw. Jerusalem had been a provincial capital, its temple modest by ancient Near Eastern standards. Babylon was a world metropolis, wealthy and powerful beyond anything the Jews had experienced. The cognitive dissonance must have been profound. Their theology said Yahweh had chosen them, promised them the land, would protect them forever. Yet here they were, conquered, exiled, their temple destroyed, while Babylon prospered under gods the Jews considered false idols. How to maintain faith under these circumstances? How to explain apparent divine abandonment? How to preserve identity while living among foreigners? The Jewish response was ingenious. They reinterpreted their situation as divine punishment for their sins, particularly their worship of other gods alongside Yahweh. The exile wasn't divine weakness, but divine judgment. Babylon was the instrument of Yahweh's wrath, not proof of Marduk's power. This interpretation transformed crushing defeat into theological vindication. It also implied that if the people repented and returned to exclusive worship of Yahweh, he would restore them. The exile wasn't permanent but temporary, a punishment with a purpose, leading eventually to redemption. This theological innovation, interpreting military defeat as divine judgment rather than divine weakness, became foundational to Jewish and later Christian thought. When bad things happen, it's not because God is weak or uncaring, but because of human sin or as a test of faith. The Jews in Babylon also began developing what would become Pharisaic and later Rabbinic Judaism. Without the temple, how should religion be practiced? Increasingly, the answer became through study of sacred texts, through prayer, through ethical living. Synagogues may have originated during the Babylonian exile as gathering places for prayer and study. The role of the rabbi as teacher and interpreter of law became increasingly important. Judaism was transforming from a temple-centered religion to a text-centered one, a transformation that would allow it to survive subsequent dispersions and persecutions. Ironically, Babylonian exile thus strengthened rather than weakened Judaism. The religion emerged more clearly defined, more committed to monotheism, more focused on texts and laws, more portable and resilient. Many Jews, when Cyrus permitted their return in 538 BCE, chose to remain in Babylon. They had built lives, established businesses, raised children who had never seen Jerusalem. Babylon had become home. A thriving Jewish community remained in Mesopotamia for over 2,000 years, until the mid-20th century when most emigrated to Israel. Breathe, slowly and deeply. Feel the continuity of human experience across thousands of years. People adapting to displacement, maintaining identity in foreign lands, finding meaning in suffering, building communities wherever they find themselves. You are part of this endless human story of migration, adaptation, resilience, and survival. Your struggles echo ancient struggles. Your hopes echo ancient hopes. Rest in this shared humanity that connects you to the Jewish exiles in Babylon, to the Sumerian farmers tilling fields, to the scribes copying tablets, to the priests maintaining temples, to every human who has ever lived and struggled and hoped and dreamed. We are all one family, separated by time but united by shared experience, shared needs, shared mortality, shared yearning for meaning and connection. Let us speak now of the astronomical knowledge of the ancient Mesopotamians, for they were careful observers of the heavens and developed sophisticated systems for predicting celestial events. The Mesopotamians identified and named many constellations, some of which have passed down to us through Greek intermediaries. They tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and visible planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. They developed the zodiac, dividing the ecliptic, the sun's apparent path through the sky, into 12 sections, each associated with a constellation and certain attributes. This zodiacal system was transmitted to the Greeks and eventually to all of Western astrology. The Mesopotamians kept detailed astronomical records for centuries, allowing them to identify patterns and cycles. They could predict eclipses, calculate the length of the year with remarkable accuracy, and chart the movements of planets. Why this intense interest in celestial observation? Partly practical. Accurate calendars were necessary for agricultural planning and scheduling religious festivals, but also theological. The stars were gods, or at least manifestations of divine power. To understand celestial patterns was to understand divine will. The Mesopotamians developed elaborate systems of celestial divination. Particular astronomical events, eclipses, planetary conjunctions, unusual atmospheric phenomena were interpreted as omens, signs of divine intentions regarding earthly events. Vast compendia of omens were compiled. If the moon is eclipsed in such and such month, the king will die. If Mars appears in a particular constellation, there will be war. If Venus is visible at dawn, the harvest will be abundant. Modern readers might dismiss this as superstition, but consider. The Mesopotamians were trying to find patterns in chaos, to predict the unpredictable, to gain some measure of control over uncertain futures. Not so different from modern predictive sciences, just with different theoretical frameworks. Some omens may have had empirical basis. Atmospheric conditions that produce certain optical effects might correlate with weather patterns, affecting harvests. Other omens were probably spurious correlations or self-fulfilling prophecies, but the systematic observation and recording of data represented genuine scientific impulse, even if the interpretive framework was astrological rather than astronomical. Look up now at the night sky in your imagination. See the stars wheeling overhead. See the moon in whatever phase it currently occupies. See the planets, those wandering stars, moving against the fixed background of constellations. The ancient Mesopotamians looked at this same sky. They saw the same stars, though from a slightly different angle due to the Earth's axial precession. They felt the same wonder at the vastness and beauty of the cosmos. They asked the same questions. What are these lights? Why do they move in these patterns? What do they mean? Their answers were different from ours, but their questions were the same. That shared wonder, that upward gaze, that yearning to understand our place in the cosmos unites us across the millennia. Float now among the stars, drift through the constellations the Mesopotamians named, the Great Twins, the Scales, the Scorpion, the Lion. See the planets in their courses, each associated with a god. Venus with Inanna, Jupiter with Marduk, Mercury with Nabu, Saturn with Ninurta, Mars with Nergal. You are made of stardust, modern science tells us. The atoms in your body were forged in ancient stellar furnaces scattered across space by supernovae, eventually coalescing into planets, into Earth, into life, into you. The Mesopotamians didn't know this, but they sensed it. They felt connected to the stars, to the planets, to the cosmic whole, and they were right. We are all connected, all part of one vast unfolding universe, all participants in the cosmic dance that began billions of years ago and continues still. Rest among the stars tonight. Let stellar light fall upon you like gentle rain. Let the planets watch over you as they watched over ancient Babylon. Let the cosmos cradle you in its vastness. You are small but significant, temporary but eternal, a brief flickering of consciousness in an immense universe, yet precious beyond measure because you are aware, you can wonder, you can love, you can create meaning from void. Sleep now, star child. Sleep and dream of ancient astronomers plotting the heavens. Sleep and remember that you are the universe experiencing itself. Sleep and rest in the knowledge that everything is connected, everything has meaning, everything is exactly as it should be. The Mesopotamian mathematical achievements deserve recognition. They developed a sexagesimal, base 60 number system, that we still use for measuring time and angles. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. All inheritance from ancient Mesopotamia. Why base 60? Several theories exist. 60 has many divisors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 60, making it convenient for fractions. Perhaps it combines a decimal system, 10 fingers, with a duodecimal system, 12 lunar months, yielding 60. Or perhaps it relates to Sumerian words where the symbol for 60 happened to develop from the word for big or great. Whatever its origin, the base 60 system was sophisticated and practical. Mesopotamian mathematicians could perform complex calculations involving multiplication, division, squares, square roots, and even cubic and cube roots. Mathematical tablets survive showing problems and solutions, calculating areas of fields, volumes of granaries, lengths of diagonal canals, compound interest on loans, division of inheritances among heirs. These weren't just academic exercises, but practical problems arising from daily life. Some tablets suggest mathematical sophistication approaching that of ancient Greece. The so-called Plimpton 322 tablet, dating to around 1800 BCE, contains what appears to be a table of Pythagorean triples, integer solutions to a2 plus b2, c2, over 1,000 years before Pythagoras. Whether the Mesopotamians understood the theorem in its abstract mathematical form is debated, but they clearly knew the relationship and used it for practical surveying and construction. Mesopotamian mathematics, like their astronomy, served both practical and theological purposes. Accurate measurement was necessary for fair taxation and trade. But numbers also had mystical significance. 7 was particularly sacred, associated with the 7 planets, the 7 gates of the underworld, the 7 sages. 12 represented the zodiacal divisions. 3 and its multiples appeared frequently in religious contexts. The cosmos itself was structured mathematically. Order meant proper proportion, correct calculation, harmonious relationships between parts. Chaos meant disorder, miscalculation, broken patterns. Let numbers flow through your drowsy consciousness. Don't try to calculate or understand. Just let the abstract beauty of mathematics settle over you like a comfortable blanket. 1, 2, 3, 4. Counting relaxes the mind, focuses attention, crowds out anxious thoughts. 5, 6, 7. Each number following inevitably from the last, part of an internal sequence. 8, 9, 10. Continuing beyond human concerns, beyond historical events, pure and unchanging. The Mesopotamians calculated, measured and counted, bringing order to chaos, understanding to mystery, predictability to uncertainty. And in doing so, they created civilization, built cities, maintained empires, and left legacies that endure millennia after their deaths. You too participate in this ordering process. Your life has structure, patterns, meaning. Even your breath has rhythm, following mathematical relationships between inhalation and exhalation, between heartbeats, between waking and sleeping. Let the numbers count you down into sleep. 60, 59, 58. Descending slowly, inevitably, peacefully toward unconsciousness. 47, 46, 45. Each number bringing you closer to rest. 33, 32, 31. Your body growing heavier, your thoughts slowing. 20, 19, 18. Almost there now. 10, 9, 8. Letting go completely. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. Rest. Sleep. Dream. The Persian conquest of Babylon in 539 BCE marked the end of native Mesopotamian rule but not the end of Mesopotamian civilization. Cyrus the Great, founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, took Babylon without battle. The city gates opened to welcome him, or at least sources claim they did. Cyrus presented himself as liberator rather than conqueror. He claimed Marduk had chosen him to overthrow the tyrannical last king of Babylon, Nabonidus, who had offended the god by neglecting his worship. Cyrus restored proper temple rituals, returned stolen divine statues to their cities, and generally positioned himself as a pious ruler, restoring divine order. The Cyrus cylinder, a clay artifact discovered in Babylon's ruins, records Cyrus's version of events. He claims to have entered Babylon peacefully, restored regular worship, freed people oppressed by previous rulers, and returned displaced peoples to their homelands. This policy included allowing the Jewish exiles to return to Judea and rebuild their temple. The biblical books of Ezra and Nehemiah record this return, presenting Cyrus as God's anointed instrument. Isaiah 45 explicitly calls Cyrus the Lord's anointed, Messiah in Hebrew, a remarkable title for a pagan conqueror. The Persian Empire stretched from India to Libya, from Central Asia to Ethiopia. It was the largest empire the world had yet seen, administered through a sophisticated system of provinces, efficient road networks, and standardized currency. Aramaic became the lingua franca of the empire, eventually replacing Akkadian as the common language of Mesopotamia. But Persian rule was relatively tolerant. Local religions and cultures were generally respected. Mesopotamian temples continued functioning. Babylonian priests continued their rituals. Cuneiform tablets continued being written, though increasingly Aramaic alphabetic script was used for everyday purposes. The old traditions were fading but not yet gone. The Anunnaki were still worshipped, though perhaps with less intensity, their myths competing with new religious ideas flowing through the cosmopolitan Persian Empire. Zoroastrianism from Persia, Judaism from Judea, various Greek philosophies from the West, drift through Persian-era Babylon. The city looks much the same, the Ishtar Gate still brilliant blue, the processional way still impressive, Etemenanki still rising toward the heavens, but the atmosphere has changed. The people are more diverse, speaking more languages, worshipping more gods. The old certainties are being questioned, new ideas circulate. In the streets, a Jewish merchant discusses scripture with a Babylonian priest. A Persian administrator consults a Greek physician. A Phoenician sailor trades stories with an Egyptian trader. The ancient isolation of civilizations is breaking down. The world is becoming interconnected, cosmopolitan, complex. This is both exciting and unsettling. The old ways provided certainty, clear identity, understood roles. This new cosmopolitan world offers opportunity but also confusion, freedom but also anxiety. The Mesopotamians were adapting as humans always adapt, finding ways to maintain identity while engaging with diversity, preserving tradition while embracing innovation. Feel yourself in this liminal space between old and new, between certainty and uncertainty, between tradition and change. This is always the human condition. We're always between what was and what will be, trying to honour the past while building the future. Rest in this in-between space. It's uncomfortable, but also rich with possibility. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to choose definitively between tradition and innovation. You can hold both, honouring what came before while creating what comes next. Sleep now in the fertile uncertainty, in the creative chaos where old forms are dissolving and new forms are emerging. Trust the process. Trust that meaning will emerge. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be. When Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire in 331 BCE, he brought Greek culture flooding into the ancient Near East. The Hellenistic period began, lasting until Rome's rise. Alexander visited Babylon in 323 BCE and planned to make it his capital. He wanted to rebuild Etemenanki, the great ziggurat. But the project was barely begun when Alexander died in Babylon at age 32, probably from fever, possibly from poisoning, definitely from excessive drinking and the toll of a lifetime of warfare. Alexander's generals divided his empire. Seleucus gained Mesopotamia, founding the Seleucid dynasty. Greek became the administrative and cultural language. Greek colonists settled in Mesopotamian cities. Greek architecture, art and philosophy mixed with ancient traditions, creating a hybrid Greco-Mesopotamian culture. The old cuneiform gradually fell out of use. The last dated cuneiform tablet is from 75 CE, over 3 millennia after the script's invention. With cuneiform's death, the ability to read ancient Mesopotamian texts was lost. The myths of the Anunnaki fell silent. Babylon continued as a significant city into the Parthian period, but gradually declined. People moved elsewhere, buildings crumbled, the irrigation systems that sustained the city's agriculture fell into disrepair. Eventually Babylon was abandoned, remembered only in biblical prophecies of its destruction and in Greek historical accounts. For almost 2,000 years, Babylon's location was uncertain. Travellers knew there were impressive ruins somewhere in lower Mesopotamia, but which mound was ancient Babylon? 19th century archaeologists debated this until excavations confirmed the location. The same fate befell other Mesopotamian cities. Uruk, Nineveh, Nimrud. All were abandoned, buried, forgotten. The great civilization that had lasted 3,000 years vanished so completely that its language was unknown, its history forgotten, its accomplishments attributed to other peoples, biblical references preserved fragments. The Tower of Babel, the Hanging Gardens, Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian exile, these appeared in scripture. Greek historians like Herodotus described Mesopotamian cities, though with considerable exaggeration and misunderstanding, but the authentic voice of Mesopotamian civilization was silent, buried under mounds of wind-blown soil, waiting for archaeologists to rediscover it. Feel the weight of this erasure, this forgetting. An entire civilization, thousands of years of human achievement, art, thought and spirit, almost completely lost. It reminds us how fragile civilization is, how easily knowledge can be forgotten, how important preservation and transmission are, but feel also the triumph of rediscovery. The tablets were not destroyed, merely buried. The cities were not obliterated, merely covered. When the time was right, when humanity developed the techniques and interests necessary, the ancient world spoke again. Nothing is truly lost. Nothing is completely forgotten. The past remains, waiting to be rediscovered, reinterpreted, reintegrated into human consciousness. Your own past is like this. Memories you think forgotten remain somewhere in your brain, waiting to be triggered. Childhood experiences you don't consciously remember still shape who you are. You are, in a sense, a living accumulation of all your experiences, all preserved somehow, all contributing to your present self. Rest in this continuity. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. Everything that has been contributes to everything that is and will be. The 19th and 20th centuries saw intensive archaeological exploration of Mesopotamia. French, British, German, and American teams excavated the great ancient cities, recovering hundreds of thousands of tablets, countless artifacts, and monumental architecture. Austin Henry Layard excavated Nimrud and Nineveh in the 1840s, sending massive Lamassu statues and palace reliefs to the British Museum. Hormuzd Rassam discovered Ashurbanipal's library. Leonard Woolley excavated Ur in the 1920s, uncovering the royal tombs. German teams worked at Babylon and Uruk. French archaeologists worked at Girsu. The decipherment of cuneiform in the mid-19th century was as significant as the excavations. Henry Rawlinson, Edward Hincks, and others, working from multilingual inscriptions like the Beston inscription, gradually cracked the code. Suddenly, ancient Mesopotamia could speak again in its own voice. The Epic of Gilgamesh was read for the first time in over a millennium. The Sumerian king list revealed the sequence of ancient dynasties. Hymns to the Anunnaki could be understood. Legal codes, economic records, letters, and countless other documents illuminated daily life in extraordinary detail. This archaeological revolution transformed our understanding of human history. Civilization was far older than previously thought. Writing predated Greek and Hebrew texts by millennia. Advanced urban cultures existed in the ancient Near East 2,000 years before classical Greece. The biblical narrative had to be reconsidered in light of these discoveries. The flood story, the Tower of Babel, creation narratives, all had older Mesopotamian antecedents. This didn't invalidate biblical texts, but contextualized them as part of a broader ancient Near Eastern cultural matrix. Some conservatives resisted these implications, but most scholars embraced the new knowledge. The Bible was richer, more interesting when understood in its ancient context. Mesopotamian texts illuminated biblical passages, explained obscure references, provided comparative material that deepened understanding. See in your mind the tablets being excavated. A shovel breaks through millennia of accumulated soil, revealing the corner of a tablet. Careful brushing exposes more. The tablet is lifted, its cuneiform sign still sharp and clear after thousands of years. Soon scholars will read it, translating its message, hearing a voice from the deep past. This is time travel of a sort, as close as we can come to visiting the ancient world. Through these tablets, Mesopotamians speak to us directly. Their concerns, their hopes, their fears, their daily lives, their spiritual longings, all preserved in clay, waiting to be rediscovered. You too leave traces, digital footprints, photographs, written words, memories in others' minds. Some future person might discover these traces, trying to understand what life was like in the early 21st century, what you thought and felt and did. What message would you want to send to that future person? What would you want them to know about you, about your time, about being human in this particular moment? Perhaps just this, that you wondered about the ancients, that you felt connected to them across time, that you honoured their memory by learning their stories. That continuity, that connection across millennia, might matter to someone far in the future, just as the Mesopotamians matter to us now. Rest in that connection. You are a link in an endless chain of human consciousness, receiving from the past, transmitting to the future. Your life has significance beyond its brief span because you are part of something larger, something that transcends individual mortality. Sleep now, knowing you are remembered, knowing you matter, knowing your existence contributes to the eternal human story. The Anunnaki, whether they were gods, aliens, or mythological personifications, represent humanity's first sophisticated attempt to answer the biggest questions. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What is our relationship to the cosmos? What happens after death? How should we live? The answers the Mesopotamians developed satisfied them for thousands of years. The myths were told and retold, refined and elaborated, preserved in writing, enacted in ritual. They provided meaning, structure, identity, and hope. When those myths eventually faded, replaced by new religious systems, something was lost. The rich polytheism, the nuanced divine personalities, the complex mythological narratives, these were simplified, reduced, eventually forgotten. But something was also gained. Monotheism offered moral clarity, universal ethics, personal relationship with the divine. The God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam was concerned with individual human beings in ways the distant Anunnaki were not. Neither system has all the answers. Both represent sincere human attempts to understand the incomprehensible, to find meaning in existence, to connect with something greater than ourselves. Perhaps the specific content of belief matters less than the impulse behind it, the recognition that there is mystery, that human existence poses profound questions, that we need narratives and rituals and communities to help us navigate the challenges of being conscious, mortal beings in a vast, often incomprehensible universe. The Anunnaki served this function for ancient Mesopotamians. Whatever gods or philosophies or meaning-making systems you embrace serve this function for you. What matters is that you engage with these questions, that you seek meaning, that you connect with something larger than yourself. Let yourself rest now in whatever brings you meaning and comfort. If you believe in gods, feel their presence watching over you. If you find meaning in nature, feel yourself part of the natural world's endless cycles. If human connection sustains you, feel the love of family and friends surrounding you. If beauty moves you, recall something beautiful you've experienced. Whatever grants you peace, whatever helps you face mortality with courage and live with purpose, embrace that now as you surrender to sleep. You're one human among billions, living for a brief moment in the endless flow of time, but you are also unique, irreplaceable, precious. Your consciousness, your experience, your particular way of being in the world will never exist again. That makes your life infinitely valuable, worth living fully, worth savouring even in its difficulties and sorrows. The ancient Mesopotamians understood this. Life was hard, death was certain. The gods were often inscrutable. But there was still joy to be found, still love to be shared, still beauty to be appreciated, still work to be done, still meaning to be created. That wisdom endures. That message reaches across 4,000 years and remains relevant. Live fully, love deeply, work purposefully, face mortality honestly, find meaning in what you create and in how you relate to others. This is the final gift of the Anunnaki and the lost cities of Mesopotamia, the reminder that we are part of a long human story, that our struggles and triumphs echo those of countless generations before us, that the questions we ask have been asked before and will be asked again, that we are not alone in our wondering and searching and yearning. Sleep now, dear traveller, sleep peacefully, sleep deeply. You have journeyed through 7,000 years of history. You have walked through lost cities. You have met ancient gods. You have touched the clay tablets that preserve humanity's earliest writings. You have stood atop ziggurats and gazed upon the cosmic order. Now return to yourself, to your own time, to your own life. but carry with you the connection to the past, the perspective that comes from understanding how brief our lives are, yet how significant, how civilizations rise and fall, yet human consciousness persists, how gods fade, but the yearning for transcendence remains. Tomorrow you will wake refreshed, carrying ancient wisdom into the modern world. But tonight, there is only sleep, only rest, only the peace that comes from surrendering to the inevitable, from accepting your place in the vast cosmic order, from trusting that all is well, all is as it should be, all is unfolding according to patterns deeper and older than human understanding. The Anunnaki watch over you, or perhaps they don't. Perhaps they never existed. Perhaps they were always metaphors, always symbols, always reflections of human consciousness trying to understand itself. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you rest, that you sleep, that you surrender to the necessity of unconsciousness, and trust that you will wake renewed. Good night, sleepless survivor. You have survived another day. You have journeyed through ancient Mesopotamia and returned safely. Now rest in the knowledge that you are part of the eternal human family, connected across time and space to everyone who has ever wondered at the stars and dreamed of gods. Sleep, dream, rest, heal, renew. The rivers flow on, the stars wheel overhead, the earth turns, the cosmos continues its eternal dance, and you, small and temporary yet infinitely precious, rest within it all, held safely, loved eternally, part of everything, part of the mystery, part of the wonder. Sleep deeply now. The story is told. The journey is complete. There is nothing more you need to do tonight except rest. Sweet dreams of ancient cities and gods who walked among mortals. Sweet dreams of ziggurats touching the sky. Sweet dreams of tablets preserving ancient wisdom. Sweet dreams of humanity in its youth discovering writing, law, astronomy and mathematics. Sweet dreams, dear traveller. Sweet dreams. Sleep.